Chapter 1. The Line in the Sand. David Partin pulled into his mother's driveway with the familiar heaviness tightening across his shoulders. The house itself wasn't the problem. White siding, flower beds obsessively maintained, the welcome mat that insisted, "Family gathers here." None of that bothered him. It was everything that came after the front door opened. He locked his truck, let out a breath that felt older than his 37 years, and stepped inside. "Sweetie," his mother called from the kitchen before he even had a chance to close the door. "You're late. It's 2 minutes past 6, David said, hanging his coat on the hook that still had a faded label reading David's in thick kindergarten marker. His mother had never taken it down. "Traffic was terrible, we know," his sister Amanda said, appearing in the hall like she had been lying in wait. "Mom was worried. I told her you were probably overthinking things again. You know how you get." David arched a brow. "How do I get?" "You brood," she said, matter of fact, like you're rehearsing a dramatic monologue in your head. "I don't brood." Amanda rolled her eyes and stage whispered, "See? Brooding." He didn't rise to it. He'd learned years ago that reacting only encouraged her. They settled at the dinner table, where his mother had arranged everything with the meticulous care of a woman who thought food was a cure-all. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, rolls warm enough to fog the glass dish. "Looks great," David said genuinely. Food wasn't the issue either. "It would look better," his mother said gently, "if there were 4 plates instead of 3. There it was. 2 minutes and 30 seconds in, almost a new record. David froze with his napkin halfway to his lap. "Mom," she called again. Amanda added, reaching for a roll like she wasn't about to light David's Sunday dinner on fire. "Erica, she's been asking how you're doing." "I'm sure she has." David's voice stayed even, but a quiet warning threaded beneath it. "She misses you," his mother said softly. "People make mistakes, honey." "She didn't make a mistake," he replied. "She made a habit." They both flinched, but not enough to stop. His mother leaned forward, worry lining her face. 3 years is a long time to stay angry." "I'm not angry," David said. "I'm done. But you didn't even try counseling." "Because I didn't want to spend months paying someone to explain why cheating is bad," he snapped before he could stop himself. Silence rolled across the table. Amanda swallowed her bite of chicken like it had suddenly turned into cardboard. His mother cleared her throat. "She said she's grown. She regrets everything. Mom." David exhaled, slow, deliberate. "Why are we doing this again?" "Because," she said, voice wobbling, "your marriage mattered." "It mattered to me," he corrected. "She treated it like a hobby." Amanda set down her fork. "You can't stay single forever." "I can," David said. "Happily." "Oh, come on," Amanda groaned. "You're 37, not 80. You need companionship, connection, romance, something. And Erica, Amanda, she loves you." She admitted she messed up. "People grow, David. People change." The words hit him harder than they should have. Because he had changed. The divorce had changed him, yes, but rebuilding from the ashes had changed him more. The bankruptcy, the business he'd watched burn down in a courtroom while Erica played the victim she'd never been. The nights he'd stared at a ceiling in a tiny rented room, wondering how a judge could decide someone who broke his trust deserved half the pieces of the wreckage left behind. His mother reached across the table, touch gentle and pleading. "Sweetheart, we just want you to be happy." Something in David finally snapped into clarity. Not anger, but something cleaner, sharper. A truth that had been stuck in the back of his throat for years. "Then why?" he asked quietly. "Do you two keep pushing me toward the one person who made me lose everything?" They froze. David didn't look away. "I'm asking seriously. Why do you hate me?" "David," Amanda gasped. "We don't." "What kind of question is that?" "An honest one." His voice stayed calm. Too calm. "Because if you loved me, you wouldn't try to drag me back to someone who burned my life down and salted the ground so nothing could grow for years." His mother's eyes filled, hurt and confusion swirling together. "We just think." "No," he said gently but firmly. "You think I haven't suffered enough." "That's not true," Amanda protested. "Then why keep bringing her up?" he asked. "Why pretend what she did was a rough patch instead of a pattern? Why ignore the fact that the courts handed her everything she wanted while I lost the business I built from a folding card table and a borrowed laptop?" His mother whispered, barely audible. "We thought maybe forgiveness would help." "Forgiveness isn't reconciliation," David said. "I forgave her enough to stop having nightmares. That's all I owe anyone." Amanda leaned back, crossing her arms. "You're being dramatic." "No," he said. "I'm being done." The room fell so quiet the ticking kitchen clock might as well have been a jackhammer. David pushed back his chair, stood, and placed his napkin neatly on the table. "I love you both," he said. "But if either of you bring her up again at all, I'm gone. I mean it. You can forget you know me." His mother's hand trembled. "David, don't say things you don't mean." "I've never meant anything more." He paused, letting the weight settle. "Either you want the best for me, or you want me to suffer. I guess we'll see which." Amanda stood as he walked toward the front door. You're overreacting. He paused with his hand on the handle, the smooth metal cool beneath his fingers. I've reacted for 3 years, he said without looking back. Now I'm deciding. Then he stepped out the door and closed it behind him, leaving his mother and sister speechless in a house suddenly too quiet. Chapter 2. The post-dinner breakdown and breakthrough. David didn't realize how tightly he was gripping the steering wheel until he parked in front of his townhouse and felt his fingers ache when he released it. He sat there for a moment, breathing slowly, staring at the faint glow of the porch light he'd forgotten to replace last week. Everything inside him felt strangely hollow, as though he'd left something behind at his mother's house, something he wouldn't be getting back. His phone buzzed. He didn't need to look to know it was Ethan. Ethan, you alive? David considered ignoring it, then sighed. David, barely. The reply came instantly. Ethan, I'm coming over. Don't argue. David typed back anyway. David, I'm tired. Ethan, good. Too tired to fight me. On my way. David didn't have the energy to roll his eyes, but if he'd had it, he would have used it right then. He dragged himself inside, dropped his keys in the dish by the door, and collapsed onto his couch. His body felt like someone had siphoned off the last of his patience and replaced it with static. There was a knock 10 minutes later. You could have texted that you were outside, David called as he opened the door. Ethan stepped in, holding a cardboard tray with 2 coffees and a paper bag so stuffed it looked ready to burst. And risk you pretending you're not home? Please. I wouldn't. Ethan gave him a flat look. Okay, David admitted. I might have. That's what I thought. Ethan plopped down on the couch, kicked his feet up on the ottoman like he owned the place, and handed David one of the coffees. Drink. You look like someone unplugged your soul. David took a sip. It was hot, strong, and probably 80% caffeine. Exactly what he needed. Thanks. So, Ethan said, tearing into the paper bag and producing 2 giant sandwiches. How bad was it? David leaned back against the couch and closed his eyes. They brought her up before I even sat down. Ethan groaned. Of course they did. Did they at least wait until the appetizers? Does roast chicken count as an appetizer? Absolutely not. Then no. What did you do? I told them to stop. Good. Ethan unwrapped his sandwich. How'd they take it? David opened his eyes, staring at the ceiling. Badly. How badly? Crying? Guilt-trip speeches? Dramatic clutching of pearls. David let out a humorless laugh. Maybe all 3. So, the usual emotional buffet. Pretty much. Ethan took a huge bite, chewed, swallowed, and pointed the sandwich at him like a lecturing professor. And then you left? Old. I had to. David rubbed his forehead. I told them if they ever bring Erica up again, I'm done. As in done. No more pretending everything's fine. Ethan sat back slowly, eyebrows rising. Damn. You drew the line. Someone had to. And you feel like crap about it. Yeah, David admitted. Yeah, I do. Ethan nodded like he'd been expecting that. Because you're emotionally wired like a golden retriever who blames himself when someone else steps on his tail. David frowned. Is that supposed to be helpful? Yes, and accurate. It's neither. Ethan shrugged. Look, man, you protected yourself. That's new for you. I'm proud. David shook his head. That's not. I wasn't trying to make some big stand. I just snapped. And thank God you did. Ethan set his sandwich down. Your mom and Amanda love you, but they've been stuck in this denial loop since the divorce. Maybe they needed a clean boundary. Maybe you needed one too. David stared down at the coffee he was slowly crushing in his hand. I don't want to cut them out of my life. No one said you would. Ethan leaned back, stretching his arms behind his head. You just told them the truth. Loving you and loving your ex aren't compatible positions. They gotta pick a team. David's mouth twisted. I hate thinking of it like that. Too bad, buddy. Life's already playing that game. Ethan reached for another napkin. Anyway, you need something good in your routine. Something fun. Something not tied to your family, your past, or your trauma. David snorted. Like what? I don't exactly have a thrilling social calendar. Fine, Ethan said, warming up like a man about to unleash nonsense. How about goat yoga? No. Why not? Because goats climb things, Ethan. Exactly. Think of the metaphorical growth. Tiny hooves lifting your spirit. Literally. David stared at him. Do you hear yourself? Always. I take great joy in it. Ethan waved a hand. Okay, fine. No goats. What about improv classes? Hard pass. A pottery workshop? What am I, in a Hallmark movie? Ethan snapped his fingers. Perfect. You could be. Divorced dude puts his life back together with whimsical clay creations. I'd watch it. I wouldn't. All right, Mr. Cynical. Ethan pulled out his phone. Let's see, salsa lessons? Not unless you want me in the ER. A weekend fishing trip? Do I look like I fish? No. But you look like someone who needs to sit in silence near water. David sighed and rubbed his temples. Ethan, I don't need a hobby. I just need a couple of days where no one brings up my ex-wife. That's exactly why you need a hobby. Something that isn't All this. Ethan motioned vaguely at David's general existence. David let out a long breath. Maybe I just need to change up my routine. Do something different. Go somewhere different. Ethan brightened. Yes, there you go. This is great. Where? I don't know. A place that's quiet. A monastery? No. A cemetery? Absolutely not. A bookstore, Ethan suggested. David hesitated. Before everything collapsed 3 years ago, David used to spend hours in a local bookstore café. It had been his favorite place. Warm wood shelves, soft jazz music, the smell of coffee and paper blending into something peaceful. He hadn't gone back since. Not because he didn't want to, but because it felt like a place that belonged to the version of him who still believed his life was on track. Maybe, David said quietly. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Ah, I see the spark. The Great Awakening. The return of bookstore David. I'm ignoring that. You can't, Ethan said, grinning. It's canon now. David finally cracked a small smile. You're ridiculous. And yet valuable. Like a gold-plated toaster. Useless but fancy. David shook his head, laughing for the first time that night. And it felt good. Lighter. Like the static in his chest finally found an exit. Ethan leaned forward, expression softening. Seriously, I know tonight sucked, but I'm proud of you. Setting boundaries doesn't make you the bad guy. It makes you a person who values himself. David swallowed. I'm working on that. You're doing more than working on it, Ethan said. You're living it. David looked down at his coffee again. Then out the window, where the street lamps cast warm pools of light on the quiet street. Maybe tomorrow, he said. I'll stop by the bookstore. Ethan nodded approvingly. Good. And if you see any goats on the way, don't. You let them uplift you. Get out of my house. Ethan grinned, stood, gathered his trash, and clapped a hand on David's shoulder. Call me if you need anything. Or if you change your mind about goat yoga. There's a wait list. There's no way there's a wait list. You'd be surprised. David shook his head as the door closed behind his friend. The house fell quiet again, but a different kind of quiet. Calmer one. Maybe he hadn't lost everything tonight. Maybe he'd finally started something new. Chapter 3. The unexpected catalyst. The bell above the cafe door chimed with a soft, familiar jingle that tugged at something deep in David's memory. It was faint, the echo of a life he hadn't stepped into in years, but it was there. The aroma hit him next, freshly ground espresso, warm cinnamon, and the faintest hint of old books that lived in the shelves lining the back corner. He'd forgotten how much he missed this place. The shop had changed subtly. New paint on the walls, sage green instead of the old mustard yellow, sleek pendant lights overhead, and a chalkboard menu written in looping, chaotic handwriting. But the bones were the same. Warm, cozy, safe. Exactly what he needed. He walked toward the counter, tugging his jacket down as if trying to make himself smaller. The store wasn't crowded. A couple of remote workers clacked away at laptops. A pair of teenagers shared a muffin the size of their heads, and one elderly man sat by the window with a newspaper big enough to block half the sunlight. Behind the counter stood a woman trying, and failing spectacularly, to stack a tower of freshly washed mugs on a narrow shelf. Okay, don't panic, she muttered to herself, rising on her toes. Just a couple more inches. You've got this. You're tallish. You just need to, oh no. Oh no no no. David saw it happening before she did. The top mug teetered, wobbled, and began a slow-motion descent toward the floor. He reached out on reflex, catching it just before it shattered. Got it, he said. The woman turned, startled, and the remaining mugs clattered behind her like dominoes. Ah, she yelped, flailing to catch them. No, stop. Why are physics like this? She managed to grab two. The rest clanged safely onto the metal counter. Not broken, but loudly protesting the entire ordeal. She let out a breath, then laughed. A bright, open laugh that filled the space like sunlight. Well, she said, brushing a strand of hair from her face, that could have gone significantly worse. On a scale of 1 to catastrophic, I'd call that a mild inconvenience. She finally looked at David properly, and her expression softened. Thanks for the save. Really. She held out her hand. I'm Mara, manager of this circus. David shook her hand, feeling an odd flicker of warmth he didn't expect. David. David, she repeated thoughtfully. Solid name. Very dependable. Unlike my upper body coordination. He blinked. Is that something you rate often? Daily, she said with absolute seriousness. Usually around a 3. He didn't mean to smile, but he did. Mara seemed to take that as encouragement. So what can I get you? Coffee? Tea? Something reckless like a triple-shot caramel monstrosity with whipped cream and poor life decisions. Just a regular coffee, he said. Black. Ah, the choice of a man who has seen things. David arched a brow. I guess. Don't worry, she said, waving it off. I'm only judging you slightly, but in a supportive way. He had no idea how someone's presence could be both chaotic and comforting, but she managed it effortlessly. Mara turned to the espresso machine, hit a button, and promptly spilled a cascade of beans onto the counter. She stared at them for a beat. Okay. In my defense, she said flatly. That lever is overly dramatic. David couldn't help it, he laughed. Mara grinned at the sound. There it is. I knew you had a laugh in you. I could sense it. Like a laugh whisperer. That's not a thing. Oh, it's very much a thing. I'm certified. She handed him his coffee with a flourish, only slightly sloshing it. First one's on the house since you prevented mug carnage. That's not necessary. It absolutely is. You saved like, I don't know, 10 euros in ceramic losses? You're basically a hero. David took the cup. Thanks. Anytime. Really. The universe sends me helpful people when it knows I'm 5 minutes away from breaking something expensive. She paused, looked him over. Not in a flirty way, but in a curious one. You've been here before, right? She asked. You look familiar. Not like we went to high school together and I forgot your name. Familiar. More like, regular customer of this exact coffee shop in a former chapter of your life. Familiar. David's breath hitched unexpectedly. Yeah. I used to come here a lot. Mara's face lit. Well, welcome back. I hope this chapter is better. He didn't know how to respond to that. It was too on the nose, too accurate. So he just nodded. Mara leaned on the counter. You here to work, read, hide from the world? I offer specialized beverages for all three. I just needed a change of scenery, David said. Excellent. Scenery is my specialty. How does that? I rearrange the furniture almost weekly. It confuses the regulars and keeps everyone emotionally agile. David chuckled. That seems chaotic. It is. She shrugged cheerfully. I thrive in chaos. He took his coffee and moved toward an open table by the window. Before he sat, Mara called after him. Hey, David. He turned. She gave him a warm, genuine smile. I'm glad you came in today. He didn't know why that hit him the way it did. A small spark, a strange flutter of something he thought he'd permanently locked away. But it did. Yeah, he said quietly. Me too. The shop stayed peaceful, the kind of calm that seeped into his bones. He opened a book, one he'd brought but hadn't expected to actually read, and let the mellow jazz from the speakers fill the background. Every now and then, Mara's voice floated over the space, chatting with customers, cracking jokes, humming as she cleaned. Her presence wasn't intrusive. It was grounding. He didn't realize how long he'd stayed until she appeared beside him, holding a tray of freshly baked scones. You still alive? She asked. Blink twice if you've entered a caffeine-induced trance. I'm good, he said. Just relaxing. She beamed. Then my work here is done. He glanced at the tray. You offering one of those? Nope, she said. I'm bribing people to pretend they like them. They came out weirdly triangular. But since you caught a mug for me earlier, you get first pick. She slid one onto a napkin and set it in front of him. He looked down at the oddly shaped pastry. This looks like a geometry lesson. Exactly. Educational and delicious. 2 birds, 1 scone. David took a bite and blinked. This is good, he said, surprised. Mara gasped dramatically. Don't lie to spare my feelings. Honesty only. I'm not lying, he said. Really, it's good. She placed a hand over her heart. Wow, that means so much coming from someone who drinks plain black coffee. He snorted. It's just coffee. It's a personality statement. Old, tortured, mysterious. I'm not mysterious. Oh, you absolutely are, she said, lifting a brow. You give off brooding novelist vibes. You walked in here like a man with a tragic backstory. David stiffened for half a breath. Not visibly, he hoped, but she didn't push, didn't ask why. She just smiled again, light and easy. Anyway, she said, stepping back, I'll let you enjoy your book. Holler if you need anything or if the scone starts teaching you math. She left before he found words, slipping back to the counter with a brightness that lingered even after she turned away. David watched her for a second longer than he meant to. Then he opened his book again, though he barely read a page. Something had shifted. Something small but real. He didn't know what chapter of his life this was, or what came next. He just knew that for the first time in a long time he wasn't dreading the next page. Chapter 4. A very unintentional friendship. By the next morning, David convinced himself he'd stop by the bookstore café, just for coffee. Not for the atmosphere. Not for the nostalgia. Definitely not for the woman who spoke like her internal monologue had no filter. Just coffee. He told himself that again as he pushed the door open and heard the familiar chime. The shop was a little busier today. A quiet hum of activity filled the air. Keyboards clicking, pages turning, the espresso machine whirring like it was trying to take flight. But one voice still cut through it all. Oh, Mug Hero returns. Mara popped up from behind the counter like a magician appearing from a trapdoor. She wore a navy apron smeared with something green. Paint? Frosting? Matcha gone rogue? Hard to say. David blinked. Mug Hero. That's you. She pointed at him proudly. You saved a mug. One act of bravery is enough to define a person. I think hero might be an overstatement. Not to the mug. David snorted. Is this your method for customer retention? No, she said, leaning over the counter conspiratorially. My method for customer retention is being aggressively friendly. Might be working. He ignored the small warmth that flickered in his chest. Just coffee. You got it. She grabbed a cup, then paused as if struck by an idea. Wait, are you sure you don't want to expand your horizons? Try something daring? Something with flavor? Maybe even sweet? I'm not adventurous before 10 a.m. You look like you're not adventurous after 10 a.m. either, Mara said. He raised an eyebrow. Are you always this honest with customers? Yes, it weeds out the weak. David shook his head, barely suppressing a smile. Black coffee's fine. Boring coffee for the unadventurous soul, she declared, pressing buttons on the machine. One day, I'll win you over. I wouldn't bet on it. Oh, I would. I bet 10 euros you eventually order something with foam. I don't do foam. You will. Mark my words. He accepted the cup when she slid it across the counter. No slosh this time, progress. Thanks. Anytime. He headed toward the same window seat as yesterday. Normal. Predictable. Comfortable. Except it wasn't. Because his brain wouldn't stop replaying the sound of Mara's laugh and the way she talked like a walking exclamation mark in human form. He tried to read, but his gaze drifted toward the counter every few minutes. She kept catching him doing it and would grin every time. Not in a smug way, just delighted, as if she found joy in the simplest interactions. He wasn't used to that. After an hour, she strolled over, wiping her hands on a towel. All right, she announced. I'm taking a break, and I've decided you're my break buddy. You've decided? Yes, congratulations. She plopped into the chair across from him without waiting for permission, pulled a granola bar out of her apron pocket, and said, So how's life treating you today, David? He hesitated. Fine. She wrinkled her nose. You don't look like a fine. You look like a trying my best, but the universe keeps poking me with a stick. He huffed a laugh. Something like that. Mara leaned her chin on her hand. You know, I can't figure you out. I'm not that complicated. I disagree. She pointed at him accusingly. You have layers, like an emotionally guarded onion. That's oddly specific and accurate. David stared at her. Do you always talk like this? Usually worse. He shook his head. You're something else. I take that as a compliment. It wasn't necessarily one, but it felt like one, she said smugly. Before he could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned, and sighed. My delivery guy is late again. I swear he runs on a clock powered by chaos. She stood, stuffing the granola wrapper back in her pocket. Wish me luck. If I don't come back, avenge me. I'll tell the mugs you died heroically. That's all I ask. She disappeared into the back, leaving David staring at the empty chair she'd left behind. He didn't plan to stay much longer, but somehow an hour slipped by, then another. The calm atmosphere blended with Mara's vibrant interruptions, and for the first time in ages, he felt something that resembled ease. Not joy, not quite, but a lighter weight. Something close to peace. He was packing up his things when his phone buzzed. Mom, can we talk? David stared at the screen, jaw tightening. He typed a reply, then erased it. Typed another. Deleted again. He finally put the phone face down on the table. Everything okay? Mara's voice floated over his shoulder. He hadn't realized she'd come back. Yeah, he said quietly. Just family stuff. She nodded, serious for once. Family can be tough. Mine drives me absolutely insane. But I love them anyway, even when I want to throw a dinner roll at their heads. He blinked. That's specific. It was a Thanksgiving incident. No one was harmed. For some reason, he smiled. Maybe because she didn't pry. She didn't push. She didn't offer unwanted advice or tell him how he should feel. She simply acknowledged it. And that was enough. Thanks, he said. For what? Not making it weird. Oh, I can make it weird, she promised. I'm extremely skilled at making things weird, but I try to use my powers for good. Appreciated. She smiled. See you tomorrow? He hesitated. He hadn't planned on making this a habit, but the idea of not coming back felt strangely disappointing. Yeah, he said. Probably. Mara lit up like he'd told her she'd won the lottery. Excellent. I'll prepare my best attempts to annoy you. I look forward to it. You better. David slung his bag over his shoulder and stepped outside into the sunlight. For the first time in a long time, his mind wasn't stuck replaying the past. It was drifting, curious, cautious, toward something new. Toward someone who laughed loudly, dropped mugs, and somehow made the world feel less heavy. Maybe this wasn't a friendship he meant to start, but it was a friendship all the same, and he wasn't running from it. Not today. Chapter 5, When Worlds Collide. Saturday arrived with a stubborn gray sky, the kind that couldn't decide if it wanted to rain or just sulk. David left his truck at home and walked to the farmer's market a few blocks away, partly for fresh produce, partly for the distraction, and partly because he had nothing better to do except think, which historically was dangerous. He slipped through the rows of stalls, nodding politely to familiar vendors. The air smelled like a mix of coffee, baked pastries, and fresh herbs. Exactly the kind of quiet morning he needed. Then he heard it. I'm just saying, he needs to stop brooding and start living again. David froze mid-step. Amanda. His sister's voice could pierce through walls. Markets too, apparently. He ducked behind a stall of potted succulents, peering cautiously around a tall cactus. And there she was, Amanda, wearing sunglasses large enough to double as windshields, arms waving as she spoke to, oh no, to Mara. Mara stood there in her sage green jacket, holding a bunch of carrots she clearly hadn't intended to buy, nodding politely as Amanda rambled on like she'd been waiting all morning to corner a stranger. He's just so stubborn, Amanda continued. My brother refuses to even consider moving on. He thinks one heartbreak means he has to live alone like some kind of mountain hermit. Mara pressed her lips together, hard, like she was physically restraining herself from laughing. A mountain hermit? Yes, exactly, Amanda said triumphantly, as if this had been the missing descriptor all along. He's just so stuck, and now he's cut us off from even mentioning the ex. Can you believe that? Mara blinked. Well, sometimes people set boundaries for a reason. Oh, sure, Amanda said, waving her hand. But he takes everything so seriously, and he needs someone to push him out of this funk. Someone patient. Someone… Oh, excuse me 1 second. Amanda spotted a vendor selling zucchini and spun around, leaving Mara standing there looking simultaneously confused, amused, and mildly trapped. David took a step forward before thinking, then stopped himself. Mara didn't know that Mountain Hermit was him. She didn't know she'd just been ambushed by Amanda in full dramatic form. He could walk away, pretend he'd never seen this, except Amanda's voice rose again. This zucchini is outrageously priced, she declared. Do I look like I was born yesterday? I know a scam when I see one. Mara winced. He couldn't leave her to fend for herself in that. He stepped out from behind the cactus. Mara! She turned, and relief washed over her face so fast it was comical. Oh, thank goodness, she muttered. Then her eyes widened with realization. Wait, you're the brother. Amanda's sunglasses whipped toward him. David. David sighed. Yep, it's me. Small world. Mara pointed at him with her carrot bouquet. Mountain Hermit? He groaned. Please don't call me that. I make no promises. Amanda marched over, zucchini in hand. David, tell this vendor that €2 for this thing is daylight robbery. I'm not getting involved in your produce negotiations, David said. It's principle. Amanda snapped. Principle doesn't mean arguing over a zucchini like it insulted your family. Mara snorted so loudly she had to cover her mouth, shoulders shaking. What is happening right now? David asked her under his breath. I think, Mara whispered. I'm witnessing a family sitcom in real time. He sighed. Sorry you got caught in the crossfire. It's fine, she whispered. I've always wanted to experience a live-action soap opera. Before he could retort, Amanda tossed the zucchini back onto the table and turned her attention to David like a laser-guided missile. So, she said, narrowing her eyes. You know Mara. We've met, David said. Met? Mara echoed with downright suspicious cheer. Oh, we've had multiple conversations. He even tried one of my questionable scones. David muttered. It wasn't questionable. It was a geometry experiment, she corrected. Amanda looked between them, her expression shifting rapidly through curiosity, realization, and then gleeful mischief. Oh, she said. Interesting. David stiffened. No, you don't even know what I was going to say. You were going to make assumptions. I make observations, she insisted. Mara raised a hand. For the record, we're not. Not yet, Amanda finished smugly. David groaned. Amanda, please. Amanda ignored him entirely and leaned toward Mara. He's a wonderful guy. Traumatized, stubbornly independent, emotionally unavailable. Wow, David muttered. But wonderful, Amanda continued. And he needs someone who can handle his layers. Mara blinked. David has layers? Like an onion, Amanda confirmed confidently. Mara turned to David, eyes sparkling. I knew it. He rubbed his face. I hate this conversation. Amanda ignored that too. I'm just saying, if you know anyone… She's not a matchmaker, David cut in sharply. Oh, I absolutely am, Mara said. David's head snapped up. What? She grinned. Professional? No, but recreationally? All the time. I once set up 2 customers at the cafe and now they're engaged. Amanda gasped. This is fate. This is a nightmare, David corrected. Mara patted his shoulder. Relax. I'm not setting you up. Unless you want me to. I don't. Are you sure? Positive. Mara held up her hands. All right. I respect that. Amanda looked personally offended at Mara's compliance. But he needs someone. David exhaled slowly. What I need is for my family to stop treating me like I'm broken. Amanda opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, then, for once, said nothing. Mara stepped in gently. He's allowed to take his time. Amanda blinked at her, as if Mara were speaking an alien language. Then, grudgingly, okay, fine, maybe. I'll try. David stared at her. Really? Amanda groaned. Don't make me say it twice. It wasn't much. But it was something. Mara nudged him. Well, look at that. Progress. David let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Amanda waved the zucchini at him in a final act of lingering defiance. And for the record, it was overpriced. She marched off dramatically, leaving behind the kind of silence that buzzes with leftover chaos. David turned to Mara, exhausted. I'm so sorry. Don't be, she said brightly. This was the most entertaining morning I've had in weeks. You say that now. Oh, come on. She bumped his arm lightly. I loved it. Besides, you handled it well. I handled it by wishing the earth would swallow me. You handled it by being human. She shrugged. And now I know a tiny bit more about you. Mountain Hermit. Please stop calling me that. Never. A drop of rain hit his shoulder. Mara glanced up as the sky finally made up its mind and began sprinkling lightly. Well, she said, gathering her jacket. I should get back before the weather decides to drown my carrots. He looked at the orange-tipped bouquet in her hands. You're really buying those? Of course, she said brightly. They were emotional support carrots. I bonded with them. He shook his head, smiling despite himself. Mara started to walk away, then turned back abruptly. Oh, and David? Yeah. She hesitated just long enough that he noticed. Thanks for not letting me get swallowed whole by your sister. He chuckled. Anytime. She grinned, lifted the carrot bouquet in a salute, and disappeared into the market crowd. And as the drizzle thickened, David realized something unexpected. He wasn't annoyed. He wasn't stressed. He wasn't overthinking anything. Not the chaos, not the awkwardness, not even the strange new warmth he felt whenever he said her name in his head. He was okay. More okay than he had been in a very long time. Chapter 6. A date that isn't a date, except it is. The following Thursday, David found himself pacing his living room like a man trying to walk off a nervous breakdown he refused to admit he was having. It's not a date, he muttered. His reflection in the dark TV screen looked unconvinced. It's a movie night, he insisted. A community movie night. In a park. Public park. With families and dogs and blankets. Very not date energy. His reflection continued its silent judgment. David ran a hand through his hair and checked his phone for the 10th time. Mara. Pick you up? Or meet there? He had already answered, after agonizing over which version of meet there sounded the most casual and emotionally detached. He settled on, meet there is good. Now he was waiting and trying not to think. Thinking led to spirals, and spirals led to places he wasn't ready to go. He finally grabbed his jacket and stepped outside. So the community park sprawled along the riverbank, lantern lights strung between young trees, a large inflatable movie screen bobbing slightly in the breeze. Volunteers rushed around setting up, and families claimed patches of grass with picnic blankets and impossible optimism given the forecast. David arrived early, because of course he did, and stood with his hands in his pockets, trying to look like a normal person who absolutely did not care who he was about to meet, which made it all the more unfair when Mara arrived looking, well, not like herself. She still had the chaotic energy. Yes, but it had been packaged into something surprisingly put together. A deep red sweater that somehow made her eyes brighter, dark jeans, hair loosely pinned up with a pencil she didn't realize was there. She spotted him and waved both arms like a ship trying to get rescued. David! Several people turned. David pretended they hadn't. You came, she said as she reached him. You invited me, he said. Yes, but I invite people to things and sometimes they don't show up because they're cowards. I'm glad I'm not a coward? You're very brave. Gold star. She mimed sticking one on his chest. He shook his head, failing miserably to suppress a smile. You look nice. Thanks, she said brightly. I tried a new conditioner and have no idea what it's doing, but I'm embracing it. He wasn't talking about the conditioner, but he let it go. They found a spot on the grass where she unfurled a blanket decorated with tiny cartoon frogs holding umbrellas. David stared at it. Where did you get this? Impulse purchase, she said proudly. I buy things based on vibes, not practicality. He sat carefully. It's cheerful. Thank you. I aim to overwhelm people with whimsy. He believed it. As the sun dipped, the air cooled. Children settled. Couples cuddled. Dogs wandered around like furry anarchists. The film was some quirky indie comedy about mistaken identity and goats, something Ethan would have found deeply validating. Halfway through it, Mara tilted her head toward him. You're really serious, she whispered. I'm watching the movie. I know, but even while watching the movie, you're serious. You're serious has a serious. I don't know what that means. It means, she said, leaning a little closer. You're focused, intense, stoic. A stoic, intense focuser. That's not a phrase. It is now. He exhaled, then smirked. You talk during movies a lot, don't you? Only when I need to narrate important emotional insights. Important, he echoed. Very. A child behind them kicked over a bucket of popcorn, which landed with an explosion of kernels on the back of David's blanket. A dog immediately dove in, snuffling loudly. Mara covered her mouth, shoulders shaking with silent laughter. David sighed, brushing popcorn off his shoes. Every time I go somewhere with you, chaos finds us. Incorrect, she said, wagging a finger. I bring the chaos with me. It's a package deal. He huffed a laugh. I've noticed. And then, as if the universe were listening, a sudden beep rang out like a foghorn. The inflatable movie screen deflated halfway, sagging to one side. A collective groan rose from the crowd. Oh no, Mara whispered. The movie has accepted gravity. Volunteers scrambled, trying to reinflate the screen. Lights flickered. A gust of wind knocked over a vendor sign. Someone tripped over a cooler. It was a mess. A ridiculous, familiar, strangely comforting mess. Mara leaned back on her hands, completely unfazed. Well, this is entertaining. You like when things go wrong? David asked. Only when they go wrong in fun ways. Not like tax audit wrong. More like giant pillow collapsing mid-scene wrong. He chuckled. Makes sense. Mara tilted her head, studying him for a moment. You're different here, she said softly. How? Lighter. Less weighed down. David swallowed. He wasn't used to people noticing that. He wasn't used to people noticing anything about him. Really, I guess I needed a change. I'm glad you changed in my direction. The sentence caught him off guard. Not flirty. Not forward. Just honest. And honesty, he realized, felt scarier than flirting. He looked out at the fallen screen instead of at her. I don't really date. I know, she said easily. This isn't a date. It's not, he agreed. Unless you want it to be. He turned to her slowly. She smiled. Not mischievous. Not teasing. Just warm. I don't want to pressure you, she said gently. You've been through a lot. I get that. I'm not trying to fix you or figure you out. I like your company. Simple as that. Whether it's a friendship or something else, your call. David's mouth felt dry. He wasn't ready for something big. He knew that. But the idea of something small, something slow, something safe didn't feel impossible. He swallowed again. I like your company too. Her smile widened, soft and appreciative. Then let's just enjoy tonight. No labels. No pressure. Just us watching a movie that actually isn't playing anymore. They both looked forward at the half-collapsed screen. Mara pointed at it. Symbolism. Extremely symbolic. They sat together, sharing the quiet, watching volunteers attempt cinematic resuscitation. And for the first time in years, David felt the future not as a threat, but as a possibility. Chapter 7, The Crash from the Past. David woke the next morning feeling light. It wasn't quite joy. It wasn't quite peace. But it was something new, something unfamiliar enough that he lay still for a moment trying to identify it. All he knew was he hadn't woken up with his usual weight sitting on his chest, and he was actually looking forward to the day. He stretched, walked toward the kitchen, and put coffee on. While the machine sputtered, he leaned against the counter and stared out the window. Yesterday had felt good. Chaos, popcorn explosions, a collapsing movie screen, yes, but good. And Mara, she was something else. He wasn't ready to define exactly what she was to him, but he knew one thing. He wanted to see her again. His phone buzzed. He didn't even glance at it until the coffee finished dripping. But when he finally checked, his stomach dropped. Mom. Sweetheart, please call me. It's important. Mom. Please, David. Another message popped up. Amanda, emergency. Answer your phone. His pulse kicked. Not because he feared catastrophe. No fire, accident, or medical crisis came with this kind of wording from his family. They only used this melodramatic tone for one specific reason. He read the next message. Mom. She reached out. She wants to talk to you. He pressed the phone against the counter to stop himself from throwing it. Of course it was her. 3 years of silence, and suddenly Erica had resurfaced like a bad sequel no one wanted. He closed his eyes, breathing slow and steady. He didn't need this. Not now. Not ever. Then the phone buzzed again. Amanda. Before you say anything, we didn't encourage her. She called US. David clenched his jaw. He texted back. Do not give her my number. Amanda responded instantly. We didn't. But Mom. His mother's message came before Amanda could finish hers. Mom. Honey. She's changed. She's sorry. She wants closure. David exhaled through his teeth. Closure. That word did not exist in his personal dictionary. Not in the way she wanted. He typed, do not contact me again about her. I meant what I said. He hesitated. Deleted. Typed again, don't. Sent it. He placed the phone face down and shoved away from the counter. The kitchen suddenly felt too small, too warm, too suffocating. He grabbed his jacket and stepped outside. The air was crisp, snapping his senses back into place. He walked. Not toward the bookstore café, not anywhere in particular. Just walked until his pulse slowed, until his head cleared enough for him to think. He didn't expect to run into Mara. But the universe, in its unpredictable enthusiasm, rarely cared about his expectations. He spotted her on the corner near the river path, balancing a tray of drinks and a small paper bag stamped with the cafe logo. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun held together by the same pencil she seemed to think was a perfectly acceptable hair accessory. She saw him before he could decide whether to call out to her. "David?" she said, brightening, then dimming slightly at the look on his face. "Hey, everything okay?" He opened his mouth, closed it. His throat felt tight. Mara stepped closer. Her expression softened. "Walk with me." He nodded. She fell into step beside him, not speaking until they'd moved away from foot traffic. "I brought extra muffins for the staff at the bookstore next door," she said lightly. "But I'm starting to think the real reason I baked too many is because the universe knew you needed carbs." That earned a quiet, broken laugh from him. "Possibly." Without asking, she handed him the paper bag. He stared at it, then at her. "It's a blueberry one," she said. Low emotional commitment. He took the muffin because somehow refusing felt harder than accepting. They kept walking. When she didn't pry, didn't push, didn't even tilt her head the way curious people tended to do, something inside him loosened. Just a fraction. "My ex-wife contacted my family," he said finally. Mara didn't react dramatically. No gasp, no shocked expression, no immediate interrogation. Just a simple, gentle, "That sounds hard." "It is," he admitted. "She reached out to them, not you?" Mara asked carefully. "Yeah. And they told you, even after you set that boundary?" He nodded once, jaw tightening. Mara exhaled slowly, not judgmental, but sympathetic. "That must feel like the ground shifted under you." "That's one way to put it. Another way," she said softly, "is that you're hurting." He swallowed. He didn't want to be predictable. He didn't want to be transparent. But she was right. He was. They walked in silence for a while. The river glinted beside them, sunlight dancing off the water. Children laughed nearby. A dog barked in the distance. Normal things. Life things. Mara finally spoke. "Do you want to talk about it?" "No," he said immediately. Then, after a beat, "Maybe a little." She nodded. "Whatever little means, I'm here." He didn't know how she made it so simple, so unpressured. "She blew up my life," he said. "And now she thinks I owe her a conversation." "You don't." "I know. But your family thinks you should." He pressed his lips together. "Yeah." Mara looked at him sideways. "That's a heavy place to stand in." "Feels like I've been standing in it forever," he said. She reached out and touched his sleeve, just briefly, just enough to ground him. "You're not a bad son for protecting yourself." He blinked hard. Something about hearing that, from anyone, from her, hit him deeper than he expected. "And you're allowed," she added, "to be angry that they crossed that line." He let out a shaky breath. "Yeah, I am." Mara gently bumped her shoulder against his. "You don't have to be composed around me, you know? I'm not good at the alternative." "That's okay," she said. "I'm good at it for both of us." He huffed a laugh. "A real one." "I noticed." "Good." She smiled. "Now eat the muffin." Emotional crises burn calories. He ate it. She watched him like she was waiting for a verdict. "It's good," he said. She clasped her hands dramatically. "Yes, redemption for my chaotic baking." That cracked him up despite himself. "That laugh," she said softly. "There he is." His chest tightened in that strange, unfamiliar way. Not painful, just alive. Too alive. And Mara, kind, bright, chaotic Mara, noticed the shift instantly. Her expression sobered. "Hey," she said gently. "We're okay. No pressure. You're safe." And just like that, he breathed again. They reached a bench overlooking the water and sat. Mara let him have silence but stayed close enough that he didn't feel alone. He stared out at the river. "I don't know what to do next." "You don't have to decide right now," she said. "Let it settle. Let yourself settle." He nodded slowly. I hate that she can still knock me off balance." "That doesn't mean she controls you," Mara said. "It just means you're human." He looked at her then. Really looked at her. Warm eyes. Open posture. A presence that felt like sunlight trying its best to find cracks in his armor. Not to weaken it, but to remind him he wasn't made of stone. He swallowed. "Thanks. For what?" "Being here." She smiled. "Always." And for the first time in years, the word always didn't send him running. It made him stay. Chapter 8, The Turning Point. David didn't go to the bookstore cafe the next morning. Not because he didn't want to. If anything, he wanted to more than usual. Mara had a way of making the world feel breathable again, and his chest ached for that ease. But he needed clarity before he saw her. Before he saw anyone. His mother had called 3 times already. He let each call go to voicemail. He wasn't ready. He wasn't steady. Not yet. Instead, he brewed a cup of coffee, sat at his small dining table, and looked at the blank notepad he'd pulled out. He wasn't sure why. He hated journaling, hated putting emotions into words on purpose. But the notebook sat there like a challenge. He picked up the pen, stared, wrote one sentence. "I deserved better than what happened." Then he stopped, because seeing the words written out, clear, undeniable, did something strange and painful and necessary inside him. He pressed a hand over his eyes. He stayed there a long moment before finally reaching for his phone. One message from Mara. Mara checking in. I don't have an emergency muffin today, so here's a virtual one. Muffin emoji. Hope you're okay. He exhaled. That helped. Then he did something he hadn't planned on doing. He called his mother. The phone rang twice. Then her voice came through, shaky with hope and fear. David. Yeah, it's me. Oh, sweetheart. Her breath hitched. Thank you for calling. I've been so worried. David rubbed the bridge of his nose. Mom, we need to talk. A small, frightened pause. Okay. Not about Erica, he said firmly. Not ever again. About us. Another tiny pause. All right. He breathed in. I'm hurt, he said simply. And I need you to hear that before anything else. His mother sniffed softly. I know you're hurt. No, he said, voice low but steady. You know I was hurt 3 years ago. I'm still hurt now because you keep choosing her feelings over mine. That's not fair. It's honest, he interrupted gently. And we can't move forward unless I say it out loud. The silence on the other end wasn't angry, it was trembling. I didn't realize, she whispered. I thought encouraging you meant helping you heal. It doesn't, David said. It keeps the wound open. Another sniffle. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Really. I'm so sorry. Amanda's voice chimed faintly in the background. Is that him? Ask him if he's eating. Tell him I bought groceries. Put her on speaker, David said before he could talk himself out of it. There was a fumbling sound. Then Amanda's very loud voice. David, first of all, you should eat more protein. Amanda, he said with unexpected calm. I love you, but you've been crossing a line too. The other end went silent. You treat my divorce like a plot twist in a drama you're spectating, he said. It wasn't a show. It was my life. And you've never once asked what it actually felt like. She faltered. I guess I didn't know how. You could have tried, he said quietly. Amanda inhaled sharply. You're right. I should have. I thought I was helping by keeping things light, normal. But maybe I wasn't listening. Maybe, he echoed softly. Another beat of silence. Not hostile. Not tense. Just honest. So, Amanda said, voice smaller than he'd heard it since they were kids. What do you want us to do? I want you to support me, David said. Not her. Not the past. Me. And the life I'm trying to rebuild. And I want you both to accept that reconciliation with Erica will never happen. His mother spoke first. Okay. Amanda followed. Okay. We get it. Do you? He asked. Yes, they said at the same time. No hesitation, no defensiveness. His chest loosened. He hadn't realized how tight it had been for years. Amanda cleared her throat. Do you want to come for dinner next weekend? No surprises. No ambushes. No mentions of she who shall not be named. David let out a breathy laugh. Maybe. I'll think about it. That's fair, she said. His mother added softly. We love you, David. I love you too. They hung up. He sat there for a long time, phone resting on the table. A strange quiet settling into him. Not heaviness. Not dread. Something like healing. Tiny, fragile healing. But healing all the same. He didn't head straight to the café. He wasn't ready to talk about everything he just unpacked. But he walked there eventually, hands in his pockets, the afternoon light stretching warm across the street. When he pushed open the door, the bell chimed. Mara looked up from the counter, eyes brightening instantly. Oh, you're here. And just like that, the knot in his chest loosened another notch. Hey, he said. She studied him for a moment, reading far more than he said out loud. You okay? I think so, he said slowly. I talked to my family. Her expression softened. Yeah. And how'd it go? He leaned on the counter. Better than I expected. Hard, but good. Mara smiled, full and warm. I'm proud of you. He blinked. For what? For doing the brave thing, she said. Talking honestly, letting people see you. That's harder than it looks. He swallowed. It was easier after talking to you yesterday. Her smile widened, just enough to make his chest press painfully but pleasantly tight. Well, she said, tapping her fingers on the counter lightly. For what it's worth, I like being here for you. I like that you are, he admitted. Her eyes flickered. Something soft, something hopeful. But she didn't push it. She never pushed. Instead, she pointed toward his usual table. Your spot's open, and I saved you one of the good muffins. There are bad muffins? There are experimental muffins, she corrected. And then there are muffins safe for human consumption. He laughed, and as he walked toward his table, coffee warming his hands, he realized something. For the first time in years, he wasn't rebuilding alone. Someone was gently, quietly, becoming part of the new life he was building. Not the life he lost, the one ahead. Chapter 9. Choosing something new. David hadn't planned on spending most of his Saturday sitting at his kitchen counter with his hands wrapped around a cup of coffee gone cold. But there he was, staring at the swirling pattern the cooling liquid left on the ceramic, feeling the slow hum of his own heartbeat as if it were the only steady thing in an unpredictable world. He'd made it through the hardest part, setting boundaries with his family, telling the truth out loud, finally ending the invisible tug-of-war he'd been in for years. He'd expected to feel triumphant, liberated. Instead, he felt still, like standing in front of a door he'd kept locked for so long that the idea of opening it was more terrifying than staying behind it forever. Mara's voice echoed faintly in his mind. You're allowed to be human. You're allowed to want things for yourself. He set the cup down. He did want something. He just didn't know what shape it took yet. He grabbed his keys, pocketed his phone, and headed outside. The sky was warm and blue, the kind of color that made it impossible to pretend the world was anything but wide and bright and full of the unexpected. David walked without thinking, guided by instinct more than intention, until he found himself on a quiet path near the river. A bench sat there beneath the shade of an oak tree, the same bench where he'd spoken to Mara just days before. He sat, elbows on his knees. For so long, his future had been nothing but a collection of fears dressed up as logic. Never again. That phrase had protected him. But now it felt like armor he wasn't sure he wanted to keep wearing. Because there was something he did want again. Not marriage. Not legal entanglement. But connection. Honest connection. Someone to talk to, laugh with, share quiet with, build something with. Something that didn't depend on paperwork or promises made in front of an audience. Something that felt like peace. His phone buzzed. Mara, if you're ignoring me because I offended you with my experimental muffins, please know those muffins offended me too. He smiled. David, not ignoring. Just thinking. Her reply came seconds later. Mara, thinking as in brooding solemnly by a window, or thinking as in actually processing emotions like a functional adult. David huffed a laugh through his nose. David, the second one. I think. 3 dots appeared. Mara, that sounds serious. Want company? He stared at the screen. Did he? Yes. He did. David, yeah. If you're not busy. Mara, I'm never too busy to enable emotional growth. On my way. He startled. He hadn't expected her to be that close or that instantaneous. But he didn't have time to examine the rush of nerves. She arrived 5 minutes later, her stride confident, her smile soft. She sat beside him without hesitation. You look contemplative, she said. And a little constipated, honestly. Emotional constipation. Thanks, he said dryly. You're welcome. They watched the river for a moment, her presence warm and steady beside him. So, Mara said, nudging his shoulder. What's going on inside the mysterious mind of David Partin today? He hesitated, but her patience drew words out of him he hadn't planned on saying. I've been trying to figure out what I want, he said. Big question, Mara murmured. Bigger answer, he said. And what did you find? He swallowed. That I'm tired of being stuck. She didn't respond immediately. She let it hang there, a truth suspended between them. And, he added, forcing the next words out before anxiety made him swallow them, I think I'm ready to try something again. Mara's breath hitched softly. Not dramatic, not eager, just surprised. What kind of something? She asked gently. He looked at her, really looked, at the sincerity in her eyes, the steadiness, the brightness that didn't dim even when she was quiet. Something that doesn't scare me, he said. Something honest, slow, real. Mara's voice was almost a whisper. With me? He had expected the question. He still felt it in his chest like a spark. He nodded. If you want that. Her smile bloomed, soft at first, then widening into something warm enough to thaw things inside him he hadn't realized were still frozen. I do, she said simply. He let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. But, she added, holding up a finger, I need you to know something up front. He braced himself. I like you, she said, a lot, but I don't want to be the rebound, and I don't want to be a replacement for something you lost. I want to be new. You are, he said immediately. Her eyes softened. Good. They sat in quiet for a while after that, the breeze rustling through leaves overhead. Then Mara crossed her legs toward him. Okay, serious part done. Now I get to ask the important questions. He smiled cautiously. Such as, what's our relationship policy on baked goods? Is it acceptable to bring you muffins at unreasonable hours? Only if they're edible. Rude, she said, clutching her chest dramatically. He chuckled. Next, she continued, are you a hand-holding person? If so, rate your hand temperature on a scale from ice block to human furnace. He rolled his eyes. Mara. And lastly, she said, leaning forward, would you call this the beginning of something or just the soft launch of something? David let the question hang in the air. Then he reached for her hand and intertwined their fingers, warm and sure. Beginning, he said quietly. Definitely the beginning. Her breath hitched again. Just a small, careful sound, but it was enough. She squeezed his hand. Okay, she whispered. Then I'm in. They stayed like that, hand in hand, watching the river drift by, letting the moment settle deep into their bones. David didn't know what the future looked like, but for the first time since everything had fallen apart, he wasn't afraid of it. Chapter 10. The new chapter, David stood outside his mother's house with the same uneasy feeling he always got before a visit. But this time it wasn't dread. It was something closer to nervous hope. He tapped the railing lightly, then knocked. The door opened almost immediately. His mother looked softer somehow, less frantic, less determined to push him into the past. Her eyes flicked over him, and she gave a small, tentative smile. "Hi, sweetheart." "Hi, Mom." They hugged gently, carefully, as though both were afraid of triggering old wounds. Amanda stepped into the doorway behind her, arms crossed not in defiance, but in something that looked like apology wrapped in awkwardness. "You look good," Amanda said. "So do you," David replied. "Liar," she muttered, but she smiled a little. They stepped aside for him to enter. The smell of roasted potatoes and garlic filled the house. Comfort food, the kind his mother made when she didn't know what to say but wanted to show love anyway. "Dinner's almost ready," she said, leading the way to the kitchen. "I made your favorite." David glanced at the counter. "Since when is roasted potatoes my favorite?" "You liked them once in 2008, she said, flustered. "I remember these things." "It's fine," he said, and he meant it. "It's good to be here." His mother's shoulders eased. Amanda nudged him. "So, you said you might bring someone?" David's pulse ticked up. "Yeah." Both women straightened instantly, expressions shifting into identical wide-eyed anticipation. "Not tonight," he clarified quickly. They deflated in perfectly synchronized disappointment. "But soon," he added. His mother clasped her hands. "Soon is good." Amanda raised a brow. "Is she nice? Funny? Normal? Not a walking red flag disguised as a Pinterest board this time." David sighed. Mara. "You'll see." "You're smiling weird," Amanda observed. "That's your, I like someone but I don't know how to talk about it, face." "It's not a face." "It is," she said. "You make it every time you pretend you're not excited." Their mother elbowed her gently. "Let him talk when he's ready." David appreciated that more than she knew. They ate together slowly, intentionally. No ambushes, no emotional booby traps, just conversation about work, the weather, a neighbor's dog who'd learned how to open the mailbox. Halfway through the meal, Amanda wiped her mouth with a napkin and cleared her throat in a way that telegraphed incoming sincerity. "You know," she said, looking at her plate, "I didn't realize how much I was steamrolling your boundaries. I thought I was being helpful. But I wasn't. I get that now." David swallowed. "I appreciate that," he said quietly. Amanda nodded once. "And if you're seeing someone, I'm happy for you." Their mother chimed in, voice trembling just a little. "We both are. Just tell us how to support you, sweetheart. We'll learn." He believed her. For the first time in a long time, he genuinely believed her. After dinner, David stepped outside for a breath of cool night air. He lingered on the porch, listening to the muffled clinks of dishes and the low hum of his sister and mother clearing the table. A weight lifted. Not all at once, but slowly, steadily. His phone chimed. "Mara, did you survive dinner? Blink twice if you need rescuing." David chuckled. "David, survived. No rescuing required." Mara, wow. Impressive. "Should I alert the news?" "Local man makes peace with family. Film at 11. David, if they interview you, lie about the muffins." Mara, "Never. My muffin legacy must be preserved." He leaned on the porch railing. "David, can I see you tomorrow?" The typing bubbles appeared instantly. Mara, yes. Definitely yes. He felt warmth bloom in his chest, unexpected and undeniable. The next afternoon, they met at the café. Mara was wiping down a table with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for Olympic sports. When she spotted him, she lit up. "You look different," she announced. "Different how?" "Lighter," she said. "Like you're carrying a backpack with fewer emotional bricks." "Accurate," he admitted. She tossed the towel on a chair and joined him by the counter. "So, do I get details?" "Later," he said. "But it went well." "I'm glad." She studied him for a moment, a small smile tugging at her lips. "You look like someone at the beginning of something." He hesitated, then mirrored her smile. "Maybe I am." Mara leaned forward, resting her elbows on the counter. "In that case." She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a small folded slip of paper. "A contract," she declared. "To make our beginning official." He laughed. "A contract." She handed it to him. "Unofficial, non-binding agreement of whatever this is. Article 1. No rushing. Article 2. No pressure. Article 3. No legal entanglements. Ever. Article 4. Emotional honesty, even when it's messy. Article 5. David must try one foam-based drink within the next 30 days. Article 6. Mara will reduce catastrophe. Hick muffin experiments by no less than 15%. Article 7. Mutual patience. Mutual laughter. Mutual effort. Article 8. This agreement can be amended at any time by mutual chaos. Signed, Mara, and hopefully David. "This is ridiculous," he said, smiling. "That's the point." He found a pen and signed the bottom. When he slid it back to her, Mara looked at his signature like it was something worth treasuring. She folded the contract carefully and tucked it into her apron. It's official, then? Yeah, he said softly. It is. They stepped outside together, walking slowly toward the path by the river. Mara's hand brushed his. She didn't grab it. She just offered it, gentle, open, unforced. He took it, and it felt right. Not like destiny, not like fate, just right. A new chapter, a new beginning, on his terms, with someone who didn't demand a version of him that hurt to be. Mara squeezed his hand lightly. So, she said, bright but soft, what do you want to do with this new chapter of yours? David looked at her, the spark in her eyes, the warmth in her smile, the energy she carried like an invitation. I want to see where it goes, he said, slowly, honestly. She beamed. Perfect. I'm good at slow. I'm terrible at quiet, but I'm great at slow. He laughed. For the first time in years, the sound felt whole. They walked along the riverbank, hand in hand, the sun dipping low behind them, the future stretching open ahead. Unknown, uncertain, but no longer frightening. He wasn't rebuilding anymore. He was living, and this time he wasn't doing it alone.